the Assistant Commissioner for Immigrant and Refugee Affairs. So today is going to be an exciting day because we have special topics that we will be discussing, and different guest speakers have joined us, as you've seen on the agenda, including farmers, state leaders, and some of my colleagues will be presenting and sharing some resources, both from Department of Agriculture, DEED, and our local partners here in the state. In the meantime, just a few housekeeping items to be aware of. Please share your name, title, agency that you represent, and contact information. This is just for networking purposes. Those of you that do not know about this forum, it's the Immigrant and Refugee Affairs Forum, held first Tuesday of the month, 3 to 4:30. And once we hold the forum, it's a platform designed to connect state leaders, resources, and connect with immigrant and refugee community members in our state, advocates that are working with the communities, and different programs and services to highlight the needs and also address the challenges our communities are facing. So if you would share your contact, I'd appreciate it. Then on Thursdays, or if not, second week or second Mondays rather, we share a blog that's published on our website. We have an Immigrant and Refugee Affairs landing page, and usually these blogs are shared on DEED's social media accounts on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And with that, if you have a question, either please raise the hand option or type it in the chat box. And finally, if you can mute yourself if you're not talking, I'd really appreciate it. So that way we can hear each other and take advantage of this time and space we have to come together and share these resources. With that, Eric, we are alive, correct? Looks like Eric. Great. Thank you so much. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Assistant Commissioner Bailey to discuss on the emerging farmers in Minnesota and some other topics that include the resources and ways to help our immigrant farmers. Welcome, Assistant Commissioner Bailey. Commissioner Bailey.
Thank you so much, AC Anisa. And I just want to here. Just the first thing, am I sharing my screen or someone else is going to advance the slides? I think I have.
Yeah, looks like you'll be sharing the slides.
Okay.
Otherwise, I can share it for you if you want. Let's see. Would you like me to do that, AC? Or you already have it on and you want to share it?
I thought I had mine on here. I'm just using a different computer. If you can share it, that would be great.
Okay.
So while she's sharing that, I just want to say this is really great to actually be here because MDA and DEED work so well together on a lot of different projects, but this gives an opportunity for the two agencies to be able to actually say what we're doing and actually show the community the type of things that we have been doing in the last year, in the last couple of months. As you know, that we're going through a legislative I don't know how you would call it, a negotiation right now, and we're hoping to wrap this up by mid-June. So I would say stay tuned, but what I can say is that agriculture is in a good place. That's all I can say. We're in a good place. Okay,
Commissioner, I'm ready if you're ready.
All right.
I can go ahead and share the.
All right, so so the Minnesota Department of Agriculture has been in existence for 125 years and have served the state for that amount of time. Our mission is to enhance Minnesotans' quality of life by ensuring the integrity of our food supply, the health of our environment, our ag economy. The three general areas of responsibility that out of the 6 divisions is, as you can see here, licensing in grocery stores, convenience stores, dairy and meat inspection and plant processing plants, licensing of pesticides and fertilizers, identifying and eradicating invasive species, promoting and marketing Minnesotans' agricultural products, and supporting farms of all size. Now, we have about 668,000 farms, 26 million acres of land. 16 million acres of that 26 acres is prime farmland. The rest is non-prime farmland. So the average farm is about 375 acres. And so the great thing about our ag sector is that we support more than 430,000 jobs. And so we're ranked nationally in turkey, sugar beets, green peas, number 2 in hogs, dry beans, sweet corn, number 3 in soybeans, spring wheat, sunflowers, and oats. And we're number 4 in total exports. Total ag exports is 6.4 billion.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. So in regards to how many BIPOC farmers that we have in terms of ownership, not renting, but ownership, as you can see the numbers here reflected, I want to focus on our BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, our immigrant and refugee brothers and sisters. As you can see, the numbers is less than 3,000 if you're looking at that number. The reason why I want to focus on the top number is because we have a huge disparity within Minnesota when it comes to recognizing that there are more than just white farmers that are in Minnesota, but we have so many beautiful sectors around the state in regards to diversity and inclusion. And MDA has been committed to make sure that we reach every Minnesotan of color, refugee, immigrant, emerging farmer, regardless of where they are within Minnesota. So I'll go to the next one. So at the department, and let's go back to 2019, when I first started, the mandate in terms of my first goal was to be able to find out how many emerging farmers, one, that we have in the state. The second thing is that we wanted to find out what are the barriers that are preventing anyone, primarily Black, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQ plus community, and as well as our veterans, where are they within the state? So we did some listening sessions around the state. We did 6 from St. Paul to Rochester, and then in May of last year, the legislature approved the Emerging Farmers Working Group. The next slide. So the purpose of the working group simply is that it's a couple of different things. This is the first of its kind in the country. That's just want to point that out, that this working group exists. And the main purpose is to be able to, we already identified many of the barriers to entry. Now with the working group, primarily is to be able to take those barriers and bring them down. And how do we do that? We do that through recommendations to the Commissioner of Ag to better the services that we provide already, to be able to add additional services that are focused on emerging farmers, and the members that we have are from mostly around the state, but we have some beautiful diversity within there. And the reason why we wanted certain people to be on the working group is that we wanted it to be reflective of the folks that you do not see currently. And that would be our women entrepreneurs, our Black, Indigenous, people of color, our refugees, our immigrants, our Native, Indigenous folks, our LGBTQ plus community, as well as our veterans. So this is what the report was written about, and we wanted that the working group to be really reflective of the report that we wrote. Next slide. So here are the 17 working group members, 2 of which you will actually hear from in just a little bit. But as you can see, we have everyone from Hennepin County to Carlton County. Not everyone that's on the working group is an emerging farmer. We have some people that are in the banking industry, and some of the barriers to entry has to do with lending and finances, and really breaking down that structure of systemic racism and predatory lending. We have 4 Native emerging farmers that are on this working group. I mean, we just have a mixture of what was in the report. Next slide. So we had the working group signed into law last May. In the fall, we accepted. We had 101 applications for 17 spots. 17 were selected. And what we've been working on since November 6th of 2020 is really taking a deep dive as to what MDA consists of, the services that it provides, who are the players, and making sure that we were bringing in as much information, the budget, and really started talking about, what does MDA do? And I know from the outside, the perspective is that I don't see agriculture in my community, and that's something that we want to make sure that doesn't continue anymore. And so we want to make sure we're meeting people where they are. And so that's what we've been doing for the last 6 months. Last month, there wasn't a meeting, and that time was spent to be able to come up with recommendations to present to the commissioner on June 11th, which is our next meeting. We have these meetings for the working group the second Friday of each month, from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. The community is invited to that. We have a website, which I'll put into the chat, where you can check for the Zoom or WebEx links. And I just want to say thank you very much. And I'll take any questions, or if you have any questions, you can always.
Bailey. Okay, and looks like I'm gonna have introduce you to Lillian, Lillian Otieno, who's going to be our moderator today. And Lillian is somebody who is a community leader, community member, an immigrant herself, who's also one of the colleagues in the Department of Agriculture that will be moderating the various topics that we'll be covering today. And with that, I'd like to welcome Lillian.
She's on mute.
You're on mute, Lillian.
Okay.
It happens, right?
Yeah, it's kind of still early for me in the day, but anyway. So thank you so much, Assistant Commissioner Anisa, for giving us this opportunity, the MDA, to work with DEED and showcase farmers as also entrepreneurs. So today we have two of our farmers who are doing a lot of great work within the state. And without further ado, I'm going to quickly introduce them, and then we will just get started. So the first introduction is going to be for Naima Dhore from St. Paul, Minnesota. Naima hails from Somalia. She is a farmer and founder of the Somali American Farmers Association, or known as SAFA. And she's also the owner of Naima's Farm, LLC. She also had the opportunity to go to Cuba for a scholarship to study Cuban agroecology. Naima wants to strengthen the foundations of Somali and Horn of Africa farmers to contribute to the future of agriculture in Minnesota and the Midwest. Naima currently advises the Midwest Organic and Sustainable Education Service, or otherwise known as MOSES, on programming and answering questions from farmers. So please, round of virtual applause for Naima. Our second farmer, who is also going to be on the panel, is Moses Momanyi from Cambridge, Minnesota. Moses is originally from Kenya, and he owns Dawn to Dusk Farm and now also operates Kilimo, Minnesota. Kilimo is a non-profit focused on mostly from Africa. So growing up in subsistence family farm, Moses learned mixed farming and selling to local markets for income at a very young age. So when he arrived in Minnesota in 2004, he started growing Kenyan cultural vegetables on community city plots and sold them to friends. So later on, Moses and his partner Lorna joined Big River Farms in 2009 as farm apprentices, renting acreage to grow crops and build farm business. And then in 2014, they bought the 20-acre farm in Cambridge, Minnesota. So as an organic certified farm, they currently sell fresh vegetables to Mill City, Kingfield, Fulton farmers markets in Minneapolis, and also do wholesale selling. In 2020, they started peer-to-peer mentoring of African farmers. And today, through Kilimo, Minnesota, they train 20+ emerging farmers, mostly from East Africa in the Twin Cities. So as a member of the Emerging Farmers Working Group, apart from advocating for policies affecting small-scale farmers, Moses sees an opportunity to advocate for emerging immigrant farmers to share their valuable skills and knowledge within the state. So thank you so much, and a round of applause for Moses and Naima. And like I mentioned, both Moses and Naima are both members of the Emerging Farmers Working Group that Commissioner Bailey just talked about. So Naima and Moses, if you are on, we're going to have a conversation. And this is going to be very a good conversation just to sort of share your journey as farmers in Minnesota. And my first question to get us started in this conversation is, could you just share what are your proudest moments as a farmer in Minnesota, and also what are your challenges and maybe some valuable experience that you probably would want to share? And so Naima, maybe you can go first.
Well, thank you so much, Lillian, and thanks to Anisa as well as Commissioner Bailey. So I guess that was a loaded question. What am I proud? I'm proud to see my fellow Kenyan farming along with, so many immigrants that are interested in farming, particularly, East Africans. So I'm really excited and proud to hear the interest, growing interest every year. The challenges, I guess, for me still continues with land access, which is similar to many BIPOC farmers that are experiencing that. That's always a conversation that I think that we need to have more, and what that looks like in terms of the transition for the baby boomers that are retiring in big numbers. And then to your third question, I believe was, if you could repeat that.
So any challenges you maybe through your journey as a farmer that you might want to share, or any valuable experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity. That's another thing that I think we need to continue to have conversation, particularly in East African communities, that, we need to look at agriculture as a way to not only produce vegetables. I mean, that's my focus at the moment, but as well as add-on values. There's so much opportunity here. And so my focus is really to recruit more young people to look into agriculture. And challenge, I would say, again, land access and capital. There's no way for us to do what we need to do as a business owners, as community leaders, in terms of recruiting East Africans, young people to look into agriculture. Is the only thing that will drive that is access to capital for us to start our businesses.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Naima, for that. And, Moses, I'm pretty sure your challenges and perhaps some of those experiences are similar to Naima's, but could you just also share what are your proudest moments and maybe some valuable experiences that you might have? Moses, are you on?
Oh, Moses, I think you're on mute. If you want to hit your microphone to unmute yourself.
All right. Good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lillian. Thank you, the commissioners and everybody. My proudest moments, or my, the moment I was so proud is when I was finally on my own land. I could grow and do whatever I wanted on my land. So I felt so independent. I had worked for that journey by working on the requirements that were needed through the USDA, and for three years. And then when I applied for the direct loan from the USDA, I was approved, and we bought this land, and I felt like I had achieved something big, because probably I felt that I was connected back to the land. When I left back home, felt disconnected a little bit. And I also have this second feeling of being proud, because now I have other folks that are here, and we are working on, we are talking land, and we are, growing. We are trying to make a community. So that makes me really feel proud. The challenges, of course, are financial. Getting land was one, but after you get land, let's say through the USDA, I got land. I got an operating loan. I bought a few equipments, a tractor, but it wasn't that, enough. So I still was short in tools and what I needed to do the, really good farming to make, go faster in those steps. Also, the other challenges I felt were, as an immigrant, I didn't have the right support when I was, training, because the network, even though I went to an incubator farmer training place, I got the best I could get there, but I still needed my community, or real connection to a farmer, and more of an internship there. That's why I felt like having these other farmers farm with me, I can really tell them day-to-day experiences of what I see and how I those challenges I face, and they can be part of those challenges. By the time they get to their own land, they have made these challenges, they're aware of these challenges. So I felt I was more or less on my own at some point, trying to figure out once I was on this land. But that was a valuable experience, I would say, that I've attained up to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Moses. Hearing you and Naima talk about those challenges and experiences, but also knowing that both of you have really overcome a lot of challenges, and you have actually set up organizations to help others. It's really commendable. So my next question would be, what are some of the services that you've probably received from the state of Minnesota or other organizations through this journey? I know we have two partners who are on this forum today who will be presenting, LEDC and MEDA, who have also worked with state government to help provide some of these resources. So do you want to talk a little bit about some of the services from the state of Minnesota or organizations that you've sort of tapped into in this journey? And maybe Naima, you can start us off.
Well, it's always nice to get support and resources, but it seems to me it's never enough, especially, the work that we're trying to do. It might be useful in one area, but we got long ways to go. And I feel like more should be funded, particularly the work that we're both trying to achieve here. So I definitely did receive funding from MIDA. And so that was able to get SAFA going for the season. But again, I'm always supportive of funding that will enhance our work and reach out to more of our communities and what we're trying to do collectively here.
Absolutely. And I think that is also why, we have the Emerging Farmers Working Group, and there's a lot of programs folks are trying, state government and others are trying to bring up. So thank you for highlighting that. Moses, what are those state services and organization services that perhaps you've also tapped into?
My farm is organic certified here, and I have for years been applying for organic reimbursement. I think it's the marketing division. So over the years, have been able to recognize a few names from MDA. I also got the MEDA, not the MEDA, but the state grants through LEDC and MEDA. And I have right now, since I started working with the farmers, I have actively gone out to seek or to be out in the public. And because of that, I've started working with even non-profits or the extension, the University of Minnesota Extension. So I feel more like services become available or clear once there's that personal connection, or somebody you are able to know these names, and they are able to clarify what these grants are, what these services are, and I think that is what immigrants want, is reach out, being reached out, and or having a network that will always pass on information to them. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you. So I'm hearing more access and engagement with farmers, new Americans, who are farmers here, immigrant, refugee communities, to better provide those resources. And you know what Naima said, there's a lot that's been done, but there's still more that needs to be done. So Naima, I know you've both talked about the services, but also the need for more. If you could pick maybe one or two services or gaps that you see that currently exist, or what would be your wish list if you were to pick maybe one or two things that you hope and wish that state government or organizations can pay attention to assist and to make this journey for farmers like you much more easier or accessible? What would that be?
Oh, you put me on the spot on that. I feel like prioritizing all of them are urgency, from, accessing to capital, to, the education component, right? To Moses and I are aware of many organizations and entities that do have the funds, right, to connect the dots and those that are emerging. That requires a lot of time to, organize that. So I can't just, say two or items, right off the bat, but I feel like the work that we're doing is so important. And you have to understand also there's urgency, especially coming from my community, because our elders are literally dying with knowledge that we need to preserve and protect. And what I mean by that is really having their indigenous way of farming and those skills and technique is a priority for me, to make sure that I'm documenting and preserving that, and so that I can apply that knowledge to my ongoing farming here once I finalize my land. And so, so that's a priority for me, and that's just a wish item that I'm hoping Department of Agriculture and USDA supports, because that's an entire community that we're protecting, a very sensitive way of growing our own food and really preserving our culture and heritage. So that's a priority for me at the moment. Yeah, I mean, I think, organizations that are white-led organizations that have the resources that might not necessarily know how to reach out to Moses and I, for example, and many other BIPOC, farmers that are doing great work, and having that conversation, ways to support them. And I think that's really important, because there are great organizations that are doing the work, but not necessarily have the connection in place. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that. And Moses, I think to piggyback on what Naima has said, I know she mentioned capital education, but like she says, there's a lot more. What are some of the one or two gaps that you see that exists? And you're both entrepreneurs. You and Naima are entrepreneurs, and we have DEED here who work with entrepreneurs and want to support those of you who are also having this, working through this economic channel as farmers. Can you name one or two gaps that you can kind of highlight that exists that you would want DEED and MDA to take note of?
Yeah, there's something called land navigators. I have had, because of just farmers who are training here and referral and excitement, I've had a lot of people come and say, I want to buy land. Where is land? And actually, I've had some of the farmers already buy land, but the experience is not an easy one, because they don't know where, how, who to talk to, and all these things. And just offering a place here where they can have that experience is one, but the capacity isn't there. And I feel sad if I hear somebody has bought land that they cannot farm on because they maybe didn't make a good decision or assessment. So we need support in that end, and that support could come through, let's say, existing farm incubators that are working with immigrants and emerging farmers.
Thank you. That's really important. And we have our 2 assistant commissioners here, so I'm sure they're listening and taking notes on how they can best support our farmers. So finally, Moses, I'll ask you this one first, because I noticed I've been asking Naima these questions first. What advice do you have to be farmers or food entrepreneurs in Minnesota? What is that 1 or 2 key things that you would want to pass on and say, hey, this is something you need to think about if you want to go into farming or if you want to go into this food business?
Well, maybe I'll do 2 quick, but the first one that I always tell everybody is we are immigrants, like the first generation, right? We come here, we have connection from where we come from with the land. And it's okay to feel like you need that connection here. Why? Because you will have children. Those children belong here. And if the knowledge, the culture you brought with you just stops at the, like metro area and in the, like whatever little 4x8 garden is, you might not express that culture. So let's work on getting our next generation connected to land, because land and soil is one. That's what I believe. The second one would be farming is a career like any other, and I have met even these professors who are in our local community colleges and universities, and they say they're not seeing young people going to agriculture because they have that, perception of agriculture from back in Africa or from back at home. Why, how can we turn that around and say, hey, going to agriculture doesn't mean you'll come and grow vegetables like Moses. You can be, you can work with MDA, you can work with a company like Cargill, you can work with, you can be a soil scientist. So there's all this wide open opportunity, and we should really think about our future, next generations.
Thank you. Yes, agricultural careers are there, and encouraging our immigrant, refugees, and new Americans to think about that as also career paths. Naima, any 2 nuggets you want to maybe provide advice to folks who want to be farmers, food entrepreneurs, maybe?
I mean, I think as a farmer, and still, I'm not a full-time farmer, but the reality is keep your day job before you think that you can just fully become a farmer. Because the reality is, I don't see many farmers that are making big dollars, if we're being honest. It's a process, and a process that requires time. So definitely keep your day job. I have my day job still until I fully transition to my land. I think it's it's a opportunity for Africans, particularly the folks here that are interested in farming and in the food industry as well. There is a lot of opportunities. We can definitely localize a lot of food that are native to our country. Moses and I are collaborating with University of Minnesota in terms of leafy greens and other things to bring to the market. And add-on value is another conversation that I'm having with many people, and what that looks like in terms of our products from Africa and how we could collaborate with food industry as well. So there's a lot of opportunity around that, and I'm hoping MDA can support that opportunity for many young people that are emerging.
Thank you, Naima, and thank you, Moses, for the information you've shared. And as you were both talking, I'm thinking about, you know, you're both entrepreneurs. What you're doing would also be creating jobs, and, you know, your farms can grow, and not only just your farms, but also the products that you're providing. You know, it's from farm to fork, and along that chain, there's employers and employees. And I think that's where also DEED comes in. So I'm wondering at this point, AC Anisa, excuse me, AC Anisa, do we have maybe a minute for questions for Moses and Naima, if there is time?
Not necessarily
I'm sorry.
with Naima and Moses, but I see that Mar had asked a question earlier, and maybe that's something that AC Bailey could answer, or any of the other colleagues on. She said, how do you explain so many Hispanic farmers? Do you accept new members for the working group? The working group sounds like the Emerging Farmers Working Group. That's two. And then I see a couple more from Vina Iyer and Gurma Hassan on the legalities part of the community and what are the legal needs. Excuse me. So maybe if we could answer the first one and then we could go into the other two.
Okay. Those are great questions. So we have the 17 people out of the that are doing 1-year terms, which those terms will be up in November of this year. And then you have those that are doing 2-year terms. However, there's always need for more people to join the working group in different capacities. So it's never anybody turned away for any reason. So we need everybody. We need everybody.
Thank you, AC Bailey. And do you want to touch upon the Hispanic farmers and how you collected the data? Or the question is more like, why so many farmers? But I guess the more immigrants that have access opportunities of land in farming, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, as you know, as those baby boomers, just like Naima was saying, retire, you had this, you know, resurgence or emergence of these more innovative and diverse farmers that are bringing more indigenous foods from the diaspora to Minnesota to diversify the food system, but also I think it's a great thing to be able to sort of level the playing field, if you will, with new faces, new ways of doing things. It can't always be the way it's always been done for the last 125 years. So.
Thank you. And I see.
But answer that last question. So.
I also see Vina Iyer said she's, I'm with the Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota and very involved in the legal community. I'm just wondering about the legal needs of immigrants, immigrant farmers and food entrepreneurs to see if there are ways we can support and or connect to those who can support those legal needs. That's really very important.
Can I say something on that real quick? That is very, very, very important, especially transitioning to land. I'll definitely reach out to you. You know, I think, you know, I'll say this real quick, you know, as someone who English is not my first language, you know, just trying to understand the terminology and like the language around agriculture, it's overwhelming. You know, but, you know, some of us are doing it and we're trying to figure out on our own. But at the same time, we do need that support system because historically we know that land has been taken from BIPOC communities, right? And that's the reality. And because of simply not understanding the legal terms. So I will definitely reach out to you. And I think that's the support that we need. And that's the support that should be in place for many BIPOC farmers moving forward. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Vina. Also, Girma Hassan said, which farming field is more open than others? What it takes to start a farm in the state of Minnesota? What about animal farming like sheep and goats?
Oh yeah, all of those are available, but it's going to look different to different people, regardless of the way people come into agriculture, which is the best part of it. That there's going to be different points of entry. Some people are further along in the process. Some people are just beginning. We do have farm business management programs and mentorships that are actually coming to the metro to be able to focus more than it was before. So there's a lot of things that are happening right now that is going to benefit every community in Minnesota.
Thank you. Looks like Margaret has her hand up. Margaret, go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, sorry, Margaret.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner Anisa. My name is Margaret. I work with DEED. Mine is not really a question, but I just want to thank you so much for organizing this. Momanyi, I've been a good customer of yours. I enjoy those vegetables a lot. And it feels so good to eat them when you are in a foreign country. So thank you so much for bringing the idea of growing those Kenyan vegetables in Minnesota. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's really good idea. Yeah, definitely. It seems a lot of our immigrant communities, when they come here, it's really hard to maintain and having access to the produce they had access to when they were in their homeland. And it's not even something limited to the African immigrants. It's all over immigrants I've seen, and it's sometimes easier for immigrants' children to just go grab a fast food, products than really making food at home that's healthy and down the road that will really address some of the preventative steps to take in terms of fighting disease and having that antioxidants and healthy body and mind. Thank you so much. I see that AC Bailey, if you could share your contact information. Rita asked, and then some of the comments in the chat box is really a lot of support for Naima and Moses, and that you we're all in support of you. And also Vina had shared the information on some of the organizations and links, so I'll include that in the blog too, so we can highlight it for people. I see that Monica also expresses her support. Yep, that's true. We are with you, Naima. Many of us city and state staff, English is not our first language, so we're happy to help. Ask openly. Thank you so much, Monica. Monica is with the business department in Minneapolis City, and she's been really very helpful and a great advocate for the communities, as well as Vina Iyer. I see that somebody with a number 81203 said, can these two folks, Halima, it's Naima and Moses, give new entrepreneur farmers a tour to their farm and offer training or internship? I'm interested.
Moses?
Yes, I said I training 20 farmers from East Africa. 3 to 5 years, they will be growing on a quarter acre to an acre, and they get trained on how to grow local foods along with their traditional vegetables, and then we introduce them to the markets and teach them classes on financial management or business management. And then we work with all these other organizations that have the capacity to. We every day receive people coming to see what we are doing, and you're welcome to visit. We talk, we chat, because we need to spread the gospel. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Naima and Moses, and I hope to visit your farm too. I'm somebody that's never learned how to farm. Even I I'm still having a hard time growing herbs in my kitchen. But I know that there's a benefit to that even so. Having that basics and essential foundation, you know, and understanding for children is extremely important. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. And I hope that, you know, on a state level, you know, that we find the solutions that our immigrant farmers are facing and partnering with local communities, legal services, such as the links and information and resources Vina Iyer had provided. Because there's just so many, you know, facets to this, and it's not just the grants and land, but other establishment of business and you know, accounting and, you know, providing, you know, employees and whatnot. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences.
Yeah, thank
Lillian.
you.
Thank you, Commissioner Anisa. And you might have a green thumb. You never know.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you to Naima and Moses. I work very closely with the two of them at MDA, and we're here to support them. And so we really appreciate the time, AC Anisa. Thank you, AC Bailey. And I can vouch for Margaret that I've had those Moses' vegetables at Margaret's house. So continue to do that good work. And I think now I'll hand over the program to AC Anisa. We're going to hear some resources from DEED and MDA that farmers can take advantage of from both entities. So AC Anisa, back to you.
Thank you so much, Lillian. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. So our next guest speaker is Emma Kasiga. She'll discuss about the Emerging Entrepreneur Loan Program available here at DEED. Emma is an immigrant woman herself. She's Minnesotan. She's a great advocate who previously has worked with the African Development Center. She's now part of DEED and as one of the senior loan officers, and she'll speak on more of this and, you know, other ways for our immigrant farmers to access these grants and loans. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner Hajimumin. As you've heard, my name is Emma Kasiga, and I'm here to talk to you about Emerging Entrepreneur Loan Program. But my role today is very short and sweet because as a state, we only created a program and we work with other groups that can do much better than we can. At the state, we have very limited resources. So there's only so much that we can do. The Emerging Entrepreneur Loan Program works specifically to target, to support the growth of businesses that are operated by 5 different groups. That will be the minorities, the low-income persons, women, veterans, and persons with a disability. So anyone who fits in that category will be qualified. So it's sort of us state to try and do all of that work and know that we're not going to do as well of a job as other partners out there would be doing. We decided that we would empower those partners out in the field to do the work that we know and trust that they can do so much better. They can walk individuals who come from all sorts of walks of life to enhance their trade and couple it with the business acumen so that they can become successful entrepreneurs. So those partners out there, currently we have about 23 organizations. Some are very known and located here in the Twin City metro area, and some are outside the in greater Minnesota. And some of them work within certain geographical areas, while others are statewide. So again, the type of help that these organizations can provide is very, very wide-ranging. So the best advice I usually advise people when I get some questions or when I hear somebody wants to start a business and looking for accessing capital, I would say look into some of these organizations, and we do have the lending directory of these organizations on our website. This group of this lending directory is going to change at the end of the year because we just finished an RFP. So we're going to drop some possibly and get some new more organizations to help. And we always, as we say here, the more the merrier, because that means there's a lot more help out there for you who are farmers, who are really good at what you do in your trades, but you don't necessarily know all these business pieces and you need some help. And so I will post a link to our emerging entrepreneur loan program where you can see. For most part, I would say if you are individual business owner or individual farmers, you're looking to business, you don't need to worry about what is on the website because that's really not for you. That is more for our lending partners to figure out which pot of funding should they use. And if you fit the category, they will choose the money from our pot of funding. Typically, these lenders would have a lot more pots that they can dip from, and they can help you with much greater needs than what we as a state can do. But we are one of the huge and great resources, and they're great partners. And today, luckily, you have there are going to be some people from two of our lending partners are going to be here and talk to you and tell you more about how their specific program or their specific organizations can work with you to answer your questions and to really hold your hand as you walk through this journey of being a farmer and an entrepreneur at the same time. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Commissioner Hajimumin to introduce the partners who are out there. In the meantime, I will post in the link to our Emerging Entrepreneur Loan Program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma. Appreciate it. And currently, we still have the 17 local lenders in Twin Cities and metro area. And definitely, there's a vendors list that we can share. We will include that in the blog so that way people can access that list and be able to choose the appropriate one that's close to their residential or business area, and they can communicate and find out. There you go. Yeah, that it's already in there. Thank you so much, Emma. So with that, we'll move on to Helen is gonna present some of the resources at MDA. Lillian.
Yes, I think
Great.
Ellen is on the call. Ellen, are you there?
Yep, I'm
Okay.
here. Let me share my screen real quick here.
Thank you, Helen.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, is that present?
You can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
You can see it? Okay, great.
Yep.
So hi everyone, my name is Helen Schnoes. I'm on the marketing team at the Minnesota Department of Ag, and I'm just going to run through a few resources before handing it over to our partners at the Latino Economic Development Center and Metropolitan Economic Development Association. It's been great hearing the stories, and so both Naima and Moses mentioned a few resources they've already used or relate to issues they have. So here's just a rundown, and we'll be putting links in the chat so you can follow up with these resources as well. So getting started is usually a hard part, just understanding what direction you need to go. And for that reason, we created Starting a Food Business Roadmap. And it really talks you through different resources from just what you need to be learning about as you approach the food and farming industry. Business planning, funding and financing is a key thing we've been hearing about today, as well as really thinking about food safety regulations, food licensing, and other resources. So this is kind of a great starting point, especially for those kind of value-added food businesses. There's other resources you might want to look to as well for farming, and we'd be happy to direct you towards those. A one-stop shop that we have been working on at the MDA is our licensing liaison. We know that when you start to think about a food business, a lot of questions come up. Do you need a license at all? Do you need a register? Do you need an inspection? All of these are different parts of the business, but it all depends. And that's kind of the best answer we can give today. What you're doing, where you're doing it, how you're kind of preparing your food, and who your customers are could all lead you to different sorts of licensing questions. So for that reason, my colleague Jody Burke is our licensing liaison, and so she's the one that should help you kind of navigate the system to know what direction you need to go based on your business planning. And in addition to reaching out to Jody directly, we have kind of a catch-all email address as well as an online tool, the Food Licensing Wizard, that is kind of meant to be able to help someone navigate some of these questions. In addition to licensing, we know funding can be key when you're getting started. And so I'm going to go through some different funding programs that we have. At the MDA, we have grants where you kind of submit an application and get a larger share of funding to help your business. Some types of grants that we have are specific urban agriculture grants that are really targeted at youth education, community development. We have value-added product development, which is really looking at the infrastructure of your business and what equipment you might need. And then also sustainable ag development grants. So what on-farm practices could you be thinking of to try out and then maybe share with others so we can all learn together how to have more sustainable agriculture. In addition to grants, we also have cost share programs. So this is where kind of you've already done the expense as a farmer or entrepreneur and then submit for reimbursement for some of your costs back to us. We have things that relate to your marketing, whether it's e-commerce or demos like at a trade show or in a grocery store. Moses mentioned the organic certification cost share. So this is to help lower the costs of becoming an organic farmer. And then for your marketing, our Minnesota Grown program allows you to access kind of the Minnesota Grown logo, which is highly recognizable across the state, as well as reduced cost for signage and labeling or other packaging that might go with your food and farm business. There's a lot more than that too. So our grants program has a hotline where you can kind of just call and get directed to the right person. And then we also have a wealth of information on our website where you can navigate as well. Farmland access was a key program need and an issue that we heard about from Naima. At MDA, we host a program called FarmLink, which is an online directory where farmers can connect to find farmland to rent or buy. This can be done in the metro area or in rural Minnesota. There's options for farmers to say if they're looking for selling their land or hosting a beginning farmer. There's also a space for beginning farmers to say they want to find farmland. We know that this program and our online tool is a bit dated and needed some support, and so we're in the process of updating it. So it's a great time to reach out to my colleague Jim Ostiel, who manages it, or AC Bailey, and let us know how FarmLink can best serve immigrant and refugee farmers in Minnesota, because I think there's a lot we can do, and we know that it is a big issue today. In addition, we have within MDA the Rural Finance Authority, and they offer a variety of low interest loan programs. And some of these are really targeted in a way that could best support immigrant and refugee farmers, including our Beginning Farmer Loan Program and a Farm Opportunity Program that supports equipment. So Ryan Rolls is our colleague at MDA who leads these programs, and he would be your best point of contact if you have more questions. Finally, as AC Bailey mentioned, just reiterating that our Emerging Farmer Working Group meets monthly, and all of those meetings are online and open to the public. And so don't hesitate to check it out. You can find meeting agendas and minutes online. And we really see that as a body that's going to help us as an agency grow and expand how we can best support emerging farmers in Minnesota. So we're really looking to what they can bring new ideas and inspiration to what we do at the agency. So thank you so much. Again, I am Helen Schnoes. I will put my contact information in the chat. I'm happy to be a point of entry if anyone has questions. If I can't answer them, I will get you in touch with the person who can. And I'll hand it back to AC Anisa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen. I'm just going to be mindful of the time, and I'd like to go ahead and introduce our next guest speakers. They are two partner organizations that were mentioned by Moses and Naima, and they work with MDA and DEED as part of the COVID response team, and also other ways that DEED and also these two organizations are working together to address some of the challenges our communities are facing. I know that with the time we have, they have beautiful bios. Thank you, Lillian, Helen, Alex, AC Bailey, putting all this together. But I'd like to include that information, their background, and also the organization's background and information, so that into the blog, so that way we have enough time to hear from the speakers. And with that, I'd like to start with Aaron Blyth. And correct me, Aaron, if I slaughter your name. Is from Latino Economic Development Center. Welcome, Aaron. Looks like Aaron cannot unmute himself. Eric, could you help, please?
Perfect. Yep, I can do it now. Sorry about that. I just realized when I was about to unmute myself that I was not allowed to unmute myself.
Oh, sorry.
So my name's Aaron Blyth, and I'm really thankful to be asked to be at this meeting with all of you. I've worked with quite a few of you before, yeah, so I represent Latino Economic Development Center, and I always say this just because I don't want to misrepresent LEDC. It is a BIPOC-led organization. Out of the 22 staff members, we currently only non-Latino. Of the, I believe, 8 board members, they're all Latinos. So it is very much a Latino-led organization. I just happen to find myself able to work with them. I've worked with them for about 3 years now. And part of the way I came to work with LEDC was I had been doing work with Latino farmers in a different capacity for about 5 or 6 years, and sort of overlapped a lot in their work. For those of you who don't know, LED can do a quick introduction of our work. We are largely a business development entity focused here in the Twin Cities. We got our main start at Mercado Central on Lake Street and helped kind of build out the Lake Street corridor within the Latino business community, and have kind of continued that work into St. Paul and other spots within the Twin Cities. And about 10 years ago, we started to look at rural areas, because about a third of all Latinos in Minnesota live in rural America, rural Minnesota. And with that, started looking at Main Street projects, restaurants, little tiendas, grocery stores, but also agriculture, because so much of the population out there is working in ag, and that's their experience, and that's their love and their passion. So we've been working with Latino ag in that community for about 10 years. We are a CDFI, so we do have a loan fund. We work really closely with the Rural Finance Authority with some of their micro lending to specifically to BIPOC producers. We can give up to $20,000 to producers in order to buy equipment or start their operations. That's been a program that's been slow to develop, but this year in the last 3 months, we've given out 7 loans through that program. And so the need and the ability for folks to navigate that program is growing in really cool ways. We also do quite a bit of technical assistance, both on the ground. Rodrigo Cala, my colleague, is an organic farmer, and so he's doing a lot of on the ground work, working through basic issues of irrigation, navigating organic certification, helping with animals, kind of the whole gambit. And then I'd say one of the things that I think we're recognizing more and more is actually one of the more vital things that we do besides access to capital is really helping folks that aren't plugged into networks get plugged into networks. And so when we meet with a farmer or somebody who might have land or interested in farming in Medelia, Minnesota, who's been on a dairy farm for the last 10 years and hasn't really had connections with MDA or hasn't had connections with the university or with other nonprofits, it becomes really clear that we can help link them to that. And not only just to like those basic systems, but also to just other farmers that are doing similar work in their area or just in Minnesota. So one of my favorite examples is that we had a farmer come to us wanting to raise calves. And we knew a farmer that's been working for 20 years raising calves on a dairy farm that also started their own farm. And that connection for him, even though they were 5 hours away, was the biggest key to their future success than anything we did. And I think that's something that we've learned to recognize as one of the most important things that we do.
Thank you so much, Aaron. There are some questions we'd like to cover, but I want to give some time also for our guest speaker, Pariseau. And please, again, correct me. I'd like to pronounce and learn the names ahead of time, but I'm sorry if I slaughter your name again, from Metropolitan Economic Development Association. And like I said, because of the time, I'll include your bios in our blog so people can understand and read and learn more and be able to communicate with you. If you can introduce yourself, Patrick, and then we'll ask you some of the questions for you, for your organization, and also Aaron at LEDC.
Sure. I recognize quite a few names there. I see my #1 fan, Emma, on the phone over there. So thank you. And I see a couple of the other nonprofits that I had a chance to work with here recently. So I am my Patrick Dance. So MEDA has been around for 50 years. We are exclusive to BIPOC business owners, have not been heavy in agriculture over the years. So this is a new line for us to start looking at from the standpoint of MEDA. I got involved with it thanks to Helen, our commissioner, talking about how MEDA can assist in going on in the future. So you guys grow plants and animals and everything else. And my reputation, as Aaron will tell you, is to grow money. Money doesn't grow on trees. We all know that. So it's hard to get. Access to capital is something that we like to specialize in. And we know that food is changing across this country. I have the fortunate ability to travel the country prior to COVID and speak with many CDFIs across the country. And I'll tell you a quick story. I was in California and walked into the wrong meeting. I'm terrible with directions. And there was 2,000 people in the meeting, and they were all growers, and they were growing one thing, kale. So they're all small cooperative. They are all private farmers on less than 1/4 of an acre of ground, and they're supplying over a $400 million revenue business to the state of California, and they're all growing one product. So it woke me up to the idea that MEDA needs to do some things differently, to look at small farming differently from that standpoint. I got my first taste of it doing some grants along with LADC for some of the organizations that do training like Moses. And folks, and saw the critical movement of what we're seeing in California, that they believe in the next 7 years that their food production will only be able to serve California. So as we see small growing farms, it becomes more and more important for us to look at the agricultural side of what we have here in Minnesota on small farmers, whether that's berries, whether that's hemp, some of the things that are coming along those lines, and giving an opportunity to BIPOC business owners to participate. We see deficiencies in land purchase capability, rental agreements, those types of things along those lines. Although this is new to us, we're trying to figure out some pilot programs that we're starting. We have agriculture within our organization. We have 3 mushroom farmers. We have some other folks that have been along that line and trying to do small farming stuff. I'm working with some rural folks up in Aiken County, going up there for a kind of a grand opening for a couple of small farmers up there in June. We have our own access to capital. We don't look at the idea of how we can supply operating loans, but when we talk about land and equipment loans, similar to what LADC does, we're kind of the larger side of that equation, where we're beyond the $20,000 up to as high as $500,000 in some of the areas along farming that, and not opposed to looking at land purchases from that standpoint of what we could So as we pilot some of these programs, we think that there has to be a need. As Emma said, within DEED, they're limited with the amount of money they get and the amount of product design. So when I look at the agriculture side from the MDA, for us, it's trying to develop some new products, some new things along that idea that would share risk for small farmers, that where we would have state funding, possibly private funding, possibly META funding, so that more participants are allowed in there. Land grants intrigue me for agriculture. I think that's something that some of our corporate sponsors, some of our big food producers in the state of Minnesota, we're the largest blue chip corporation or state in the country that produces a lot of agricultural products. From the standpoint of that, I think that their involvement is crucial for us over the next 10 years to start thinking about how we do something to access land, to be able to make sure that it's good quality land and people are getting the right land to farm on from that standpoint. So our board of directors has begged me to figure out some things. So I'm in that transition phase of starting to figure some things out of how we can do some match programs, some match equity programs, maybe possibly even looking at a land loan. So we are going to be involved in some fashion. We're hoping that FDA comes along. We're talking to those folks also, trying to figure out how they can participate in small farming with maybe a participation from us to support those loans and manage those loans or service those loans from that standpoint. So there's many things that we have on the agenda. We're always looking for ideas of help. Helen and most of the folks that are on this call have called me at one time or another, and I listen to your advice. I'm listening for ideas and opportunities. We'd like to be a participant. Again, we think it's where the future is here in Minnesota in food. We think we should be growing our own food here locally. Whole food for us is healthy. I don't know about you folks, but I was hunkered down. First time in my family where we haven't had a cold this winter. Haven't had any issues because everybody was eating at home, and a lot more healthier situation. So I'll leave it at that and entertain any questions, but I can tell you some of the things we're looking at is rental agreements, trying to figure out how we could be part of a lease potentially, land ownership, educational, seasonal. I think there's got to be a mix. We heard earlier from one of my new clients that was on the phone about education and farming. I think that's huge. There's got to be some support, additional support around there. Everybody's tied up for limited resources these days. So I think we need to get more involvement, more marketing to recognize the fact that urban farming, small farming, inner city farming, all of those products really need to get some recognition for the value. And I'll leave you with this. So if you're all standing out there, reach over your head like this, right? This is a trick of the trade, right? Tap yourself on the back and go, thank you very much, because I'm thanking all of you for what you do, because it's very, very important. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And I see that both you, Patrick, and Aaron had covered the services your organizations provide for immigrant and refugee farmers, on food entrepreneurs, and how you work with state agencies and other areas that you're exploring currently. A couple more questions we'd like to ask you for participants to know. And of course, we will include the information into our blog too. What lessons have you learned from the last year to meet the needs of immigrant and refugee farmers, and on food entrepreneurship and farming or land ownership, or any other economic opportunities for farmers? And looking ahead, what future opportunities do you see, and how do you like to see agencies to partner and respond to community needs in the future, or even support you in this endeavor?
Me or you, Aaron?
It's both of you, but Patrick, if you want to go first, and then Aaron, sure, and we can go from there. Thank you.
You know, from my perspective, the things that I've learned here recently is the difficulty that we have in getting farms started and actually pursuing them from the product line that we have in access to capital. The products are not designed to be favorable. We have seasonal here in Minnesota. So as organizations, and even with DEED and some of the other places, when we look at products, we need to build in a component of that specifically designed for small farmers along that line, to be that we change the payment schedule during the winter months. We're able to start figuring out how to reserve some money from the standpoint of being able to hire because we're seasonal. We need the plant. We need to get workers involved. Those workers need to be taken care of in some capacity. So it's just not the farm side of that. It's the full circle. I think Helen had her traffic map up there that said, driver's education, well, that's farmer's education, and the fact that having workers is crucial. So we need to start developing and thinking around the full cycle of that program. So that to me is some weak points that we're seeing, this access to small farming capital, because it is very, very risky according to the banking groups. And if you look at the agricultural side of the conditions and our agencies that are across the state that are providing FDA and some of the other programs like that seem to be very rigid, and they're built for a lot larger farming opportunities as opposed to building small farm access to capital. So we're seeing those types of things that need to be changed. We see within the immigrant population that have the skill set, as Moses said, to be able to plant and bring it across from elders on all of the different foods and different ethnic foods that we can build and bring into the system. That takes a different type of farming, and that education piece has to be supported. So there's, I believe, a real weakness there on how we look at that. As our culture generates different opportunities within the state, we need to be cognizant of what those are. And the last thing is, what I noticed immediately when I was doing the grant programs is the distribution process of getting food to market doesn't have a very solid system that works. It's all individuals trying to buy a truck here and there doing these types of things. So I think we need to think about how that works. And if we could develop a what I call effect of many legs out there that has support from other distribution centers that would take the time to look at how they could make that distribution or logistics work. So those are the 5 things that I think that I jotted down before the meeting that are crucial to us having success.
Thank you, Patrick. Aaron?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree with what Patrick was saying, and I would just add that in terms of lessons learned, I think one of the big ones is, and it clearly wasn't enough, but I feel like the last year really showed me, having done this work for quite a while, that like when state government, when the federal government, when foundations and wealthy individuals turn their gaze to BIPOC producers and small farmers, they do have the money to help, and they have the ability to play a big role in changing the dynamics that are out there. And that has sadly not been the case for a long time and still needs a lot of work. But it was kind of amazing to see that indeed when they decide to do that, a lot can happen with the funding that is there. I hope that we're able to kind of continue to put pressure in the right places to really keep changing that culture and see how we can do that. And I think a key piece to that, certainly working with the CARES Act money with MDA, was the fact that as a navigator organization, I think is the big word people use nowadays. But as LEDC being in the community, when MDA came to us and said, hey, we need to distribute this, $350,000 in 10 days or whatever it was, it was really clear that because we had those connections in the community, also we had connection to other BIPOC-led organizations that had connections that we didn't have with different groups. And that was vital to, one, distribute the money fast, but two, to distribute it to people that were clearly in need of having it, and also were most likely not on the radar of traditional MDA staff or traditional ways of thinking about who needs that money. And so I think as we move forward, really figuring out ways to continue to identify those organizations that are in the communities doing the work and making sure they're the ones that are getting the funding to continue to do this work. And then lastly, I think what key lesson learned for me through the CARES Act was this idea of where ag workers sit in our society. And that when MDA reached out to me and said, hey, we're interested in funding BIPOC growers, BIPOC farmers, I had just had a conversation with my colleague Monica about this about 10 minutes before, which was serendipitous, because she was pushing me to say, look, like we have to redefine who BIPOC farmers are, and we have to talk about ag workers. And it was because of her articulation of that I think we were able to open up quite a bit more money of that $350,000 to go into ag workers' pockets. And I think and I hope that opens up a re-envisioning of exactly what we prioritize when we talk about farmers in our communities. In terms of the future, I think I'm really excited about knowing that maybe we'll get this emerging farmer funding, and that MDA will actually have some money to put specifically towards emerging farmers. I think that I know for LEDC and the Latino community, we've done a pretty good job of connecting with the Twin Cities community and a little bit further afield, an hour, 2 hours outside of the cities. Getting down to Worthington into southwestern Minnesota, getting further afield in western Minnesota has always been a real barrier to us. And I think that's something I've heard over and over again. I think we've developed quite a bit of resources within the Twin Cities region for BIPOC producers, and it's been much harder to connect further afield. And to me, that seems like that's going to be a real team effort to make that happen, where, from our experience going into Latino communities in rural America, rural Minnesota, it takes a long time to build, even as Latinos, it takes a long time to build that confidence and trust to make something happen. And so I think however we can find partnerships with MDA, with other state agencies, with other navigator organizations that are in those communities to really start building and that reach. I think that is one of the next key steps, is to figure out how some of the knowledge that's been learned through some of the strong BIPOC-led organizations around the Twin Cities, how do we disperse that further afield into rural Minnesota? And then lastly, I'd just say, I always say it, I feel like nowadays, but I think a key to the future of the health of rural Minnesota and agriculture is a better understanding of how we create an ag worker to farm owner pipeline. And within the Latino community, that has to be within part of that conversation has to be documented and undocumented folks, and how do we find ways to have folks that have valid employer identification numbers, valid tax identification numbers, how do we get them the access to some of the same loans, low interest loans that allow them to create opportunities for themselves and their communities on land.
Thank you so much. These are really very helpful feedback and answers. And I feel like we need to have more conversation and dialogue around economic opportunities for farmers and how to even support farmers that exist within the state, and that will help address employment. And I know that we've got like a minute, but Aaron and Patrick, I'll reach out to you because I oversee the Immigrant and Refugee Affairs of the state. I'm still fairly new to DEED, I've been here for almost a year, but I feel like the more, dialogue we have around this issue, and also involving other state leaders, and not just necessarily DEED and MDA, but other state leaders, legislators, because when we talk about criteria that are set for grants and, loans and the duration and what are the different ways that farmers can access, it's extremely difficult. There's just a lot of hoops to jump through, and especially people with language access needs, people that do not understand the legalities, that do not know the support system that exists, even just contacting a local agency like yours. It's extremely very frustrating, and immigrants are very resilient, but still, I feel that we got to have a lot of conversation about this, and I'm so glad Sandra Feast, she's a Representative Sandra Feast. She's also immigration attorney. She was on part of the conversation earlier here, and she's extremely very supportive. And now is being selected as elected as a representative, and she's somebody who's always supportive of addressing some of these issues. So I hope to reach out to you and continue the conversation and amplify the great thing, the great work our farmers are doing, and ways to come up, to help them and address the challenges that they're facing. So thank you so much. It's been really great conversation and dialogue today. I'm excited. Thank you, Department of Agriculture. You guys have been great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Moses and Naima and Helen and Lillian, AC Bailey. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.